Have you thought about the reasons why we are so uptight most of the time?
We lead busy lives, and there's a lot of stress involved. I mean, they've done studies that those who laugh more live longer. If we could just find ways to reduce stress, we would live longer and healthier lives.
Yeah.
And studies show that stress is not just a psychological phenomenon. I mean, stress triggers real changes in our bodies. A stress overload activates areas of our brain that sends involuntary impulses to organs everywhere in your body. Experts now believe that 60 to 90% of all doctor visits are kind of stress related. And it's been proven that laughter reduces stress. But another reason people, I think, don't laugh is that the truth of the matter is that many of us are just grumpy all the time. If we had a better disposition, we would be able to laugh just a little more. I mean, I think we'd be in a better mood if we did things like perhaps practice gratitude each night, like jotting down or even verbalizing a few things we're grateful for that day, or to learn to smile more, complain less. Each morning you get out of bed, you could just make yourself smile. I mean, studies show that even if we don't have a sincere smile, that it does something positive to us psychologically. We could force ourselves to do little random acts of kindness. I mean, studies show that just doing something for someone else, as small as holding a door open or giving up a parking space, can create a positive feeling. And I think it's important to develop friendships with positive people, because who you hang around with does make a difference. We need people in our lives who encourage us to be better than we are, not bring us down. And we just need to stop taking everything so personally. We tend to impute motives to others. We say, well, I wonder why he looked at me that way when he might not even been looking at you at all. Or we think someone deliberately ignored us when that may not be the case. And so just some things like that could maybe change our disposition, where we would be more open to having laughter in our lives.
I love that, the whole list, and especially that last one about not taking everything personally, because we do tend to do that. The mind automatically does it. Defense mechanisms and all.
I mean, it's sort of like a two-edged sword. Like if someone ignores us, we think they're doing it deliberately.
Right.
So that offends us. And then, if they don't ignore it, sometimes that offends us too. I mean, it's a place for an offense waiting.
So true. It goes back to perspective, doesn't it?
Something changes in us. People have a hard time, laughing at themselves.
Yeah.
Most adults don't laugh all that easily. Studies show that children laugh 400 times a day, while adults only laugh around 15 times.
Wow.
And as we age, it's only natural that we become more serious because of our heavy responsibilities and the stress, like I mentioned before.
Right.
Lives can be filled with anxiety, stress, loneliness, or emptiness. And sometimes we isolate ourselves, and isolation is a killer, because laughter in many ways is a shared activity. Right. It's infectious and contagious in a good way. It breaks down barriers. Studies show people laugh 30 times more when they're in a group than they do when they're alone. Developing friendships with positive people you can share laughter with is a real plus.
Yes. What about fear? That's another, let's say, joy killer or laughter killer?
Oh, I think so. We fear so many things. I think one of the major things that we fear is that of making mistakes. We feel like if we make a mistake that we're a failure, and we want to protect that perfect image. Perfection's overrated and unattainable. We need to be working towards progress, not perfection. We beat ourselves up when we fall short of our unrealistic expectations.
True.
We call ourselves names, like I'm stupid or this, that, and the other thing. And that is just not healthy. because life is a learning process, and we shouldn't be afraid of how others will view us.
Right.
I remember years ago, you probably don't remember her, but Julia Child, she was the French chef, and she used to have a cooking show on PBS. And I remember watching her one time, and hers was a live show, and she made mistakes on air all the time. And once she pulled a fallen souffle from an oven in front of millions of viewers,
Right.
and she just chuckled and said, "Well, you can't win them all."
Right.
I've always thought about that, that here she is, a famous person or whatever. And she wasn't working toward perfection. She was working toward progress.
Oh, I love that. Having this lightness, this sense of humor, this wider perspective in life, how can we hold on to that in moments of challenging moments, difficult moments?
Well, not everything should be laughed at.
Right.
Necessarily.
Right.
I mean, if we see a little old lady fall down an escalator, that's not going to be funny. We're going to rush over to help her. Of course, it could be funny if she gets up and does a little river dance, That could be a little funny, but it's not. And we've all gone through some challenging times in 2020. I mean, death, of course, is not a fun thing to go through. But I think in all of those things, you don't have to necessarily laugh at those things, but you can still have a perspective or have a certain kind of joy, perhaps, in your life. Because many times there's a difference, I think, between happiness and joy. Many times happiness is dependent on what happens to us. And if everything's going well, we feel happiness. I mean, even the words are so similar, happiness and happening. So sometimes a happening can bring it. But sometimes it can depend on our circumstance. However, I think joy runs much deeper. Joy can share its space with other emotions or even exist in the darkest and most difficult times. I mean, hard times cannot take away our joy. It can't take away our inner peace either. So perhaps we're not laughing at everything necessarily, but we can still have inner peace. And I think true joy is an attitude of the heart and the spirit inside of us. And I do think perhaps the more joy that you have from that perspective, you will be able to laugh more when it's an appropriate time.